What's up everyone? In this video, we're doing a deep dive for the Season 2 finale of House of the Dragon titled The Queen Who Ever Was. This was a controversial episode because many viewers were expecting much more action, and I understand the disappointment. It seems like the showrunners are trying to set up everything for an action-packed Season 3. Either way, we're locked in and watching no matter what. Before we get going, we have deep dives for all of Season 1 and Season 2, so check those out if you haven't yet. This episode covers a million different storylines, so we'll break it down into the following structure. We'll start off with Team Black, ending with another meeting between Rhaenyra and Alicent, this time at Dragonstone. Then we'll check up on what our Team Green members are up to, and finally, we'll cover the last montage, which sets up everything for Season 3. No time to waste, let's get going.
Kicking it off with the intro, we can see that a number of dragons have been added to the tapestry. It's go time.
We start at Dragonstone, where Jace finally meets Ulf and Hugh. Hugh is polite and courteous, but Ulf is a complete asshole and offends Jace several times without even realizing it. He especially pisses Jace off when he says, "Hey, look at us, we're Targaryens, baby." Jace doesn't want to be compared with any of these lowborns, so this really disgusts him.
This interaction becomes the perfect storm because Ulf is a bit of a character who likes to run his mouth, and Jace is incredibly sensitive about his lineage, as we learned last ep. Ulf feels more triumphant, feels like he's made it, where Jace still can't shake the feeling. When you zoom in on Ulf as a character, you need to start wondering why he was so vocal and angry about how the Greens were treating the small folk of King's Landing. Was it because he wanted equality for all, or was it just because he wanted to be the one sitting at the top of the pyramid?
Later on, Jace is doing some teenage pouting when Baela talks some sense into him. He's still caught up on being a bastard, but Baela tells him to stop being naive. Jace isn't the only heir in history who is a secret bastard.
And it isn't the first time Baela has tried to lift Jace's spirits. She makes good points. Being the son of Harwin Strong and not Rhaenyra doesn't make him any less. I mean, Harwin was a sick knight as it was. Moping and holding grudges against others who have been called bastards will, though.
Yeah, exactly. Having your daddy be Harwin Strong is still pretty lit. As for Rhaenyra, she finally consults with Corlys and needs to figure out her next moves. Corlys tells her that she needs to strike now while she has advantage. Rhaenyra thinks that she can chill for a bit, but Corlys disagrees. Here's the thing. Even though Rhaenyra has more dragons, she can't count on victory just yet. Helaena and Daemon still have dragons, and even though Daemon's dragon is small, Helena's dragon is actually fucking huge. Aemond's also still a psycho and is gonna do more crazy shit, so the war is ultimately far from over, and Rhaenyra agrees that she does need to stay aggressive. We also learned that Corlys has renamed his ship from Sea Snake to the Queen Who Never Was. Corlys also mentions that they still don't know what Daemon's plans are, so they need to figure that shit out.
I'm excited to see him in more action next season when I assume the Triarchy will arrive at the blockade. He's still got the strategic mindset and isn't afraid to get his hands dirty based on the path he pushes Rhaenyra toward. Her new riders are a boon for sure, like she said, but now we have to sort out just how reliable they can really be considering the sheer lack of dragon and combat experience.
And speaking of Daemon, we jump to Harrenhal where he's now gathering a massive army of rivermen. Sir Alfred Broom finally arrives as well, and he requests some alone time with Daemon. The weirwood trees whisper traitor, while Broom basically tells Daemon, "Hey, you should be king and I'll follow you instead because I don't believe in Rhaenyra." Daemon doesn't say anything and just chuckles as he walks away, and Simon Strong is listening to the whole conversation in secret.
Big turnaround from last ep. Daemon's in his element, comfortably mustering the Riverland army. Huge difference compared to Statesman Daemon, which was probably a bottom 5 version of Daemon. Turns out Rhaenyra should have booted Broom from the start. Slimy maneuver on his part. I don't think Daemon is taking the plea too seriously, but any sort of shift in unity at this point in the conflict could be a disaster. If Broom thinks it, perhaps a few more of the men do too. The spirits of Harrenhal outing Broom and Daemon just being like, that'll happen from time to time. Like the whispers or a smoke detector on low battery was pretty funny though.
Rhaenyra then has dinner with Jace, Baela, and the rest of the Dragonseeds. Ulf is being an absolute brute at the dinner table, interrupting Rhaenyra and treating the servants like shit. Rhaenyra says that if they serve her well, they'll all be rewarded as knights. Rhaenyra needs them to attack Old Town and Lannisport, the homes of House Hightower and Lannister. This means killing innocents, which Baela and Hugh have issues with. Jace comes to the defense of his mother. Clearly, Baela's pep talk from earlier worked. Rhaenyra says that although killing innocents is obviously bad, they have to break the will of their enemy. Ulf is overconfident, talking shit about how he and Silverwing can take on Vhagar no problem, and he even insinuates that Adam is a coward for asking about Vhagar. Jace checks Ulf for being disrespectful in front of everyone.
Yep, Ulf is acting just like the kid who sat in the back during high school that spent the whole class chugging a monster and talking shit. Morally, this is a tough choice. I think it's notable that Ulf is the only one who really has no issue with going along with Jace and Rhaenyra's plot.
And it's during this dinner where Rhaenyra receives a raven from Simon Strong. He fills Rhaenyra in on the potential betrayal going on in Harrenhal. Rhaenyra immediately tells Adam to roll out with her, and they fly to Harrenhal. But before Rhaenyra arrives at Harrenhal, Daemon has a major epiphany, which is triggered by a vision in the Godswood. Daemon sees all types of events in the future. A Targaryen named Bloodraven, who we see in Game of Thrones, the fucking Night King, a dead dragon, and then Daemon himself drowning in a lake. He also sees 3 dragon eggs hatching with Daenerys Targaryen holding them. The final vision is Rhaenyra sitting on the throne before Helaena shows up in his vision as well and tells him it's all a story and Daemon knows his part and knows what he needs to do. Fucking wild.
That vision with Helaena was the exclamation point on him being able to understand his role in what's to come. It's the first instance we know about in this universe where Dany and her dragons have been made the subject of prophecy or vision. We know the connections with the prince who was promised. We mainly see it framed through the tales of Viserys. Now we can connect it to what occurs in Thrones.
So Rhaenyra and Adam pull up to Harrenhal, and as they descend, Caraxes recognizes Syrax and calls out for her. As Rhaenyra walks up the steps, Simon greets her and tells her that there's a lot of reasons for concerns about betrayal. Inside the castle, a massive army is gathering, and they all go quiet as Rhaenyra walks in. Daemon walks up, and he and Rhaenyra have an intense conversation in Valyrian. Daemon tells Rhaenyra that winter is coming, and with that statement, Rhaenyra understands that Daemon has seen Aegon's dream. The realm must be united in order to survive this winter. Daemon says that Rhaenyra is indeed the rightful ruler, and he bends the knee in front of his entire army. He'll serve Rhaenyra until death. The rest of the army bend their knee as well, including a puzzled Alfred Brum. Simon is shocked too since he didn't see this coming. Rhaenyra tells Daemon he better not leave her again, and he says he won't. He goes in for a kiss, but she dodges him. Fair enough. Daemon then gives an awesome pump-up speech, and the entire army cheers for Rhaenyra. But notice this, as this is all happening, Alfred Brum quietly sneaks off to the back. What a little bitch.
Anything besides Daemon falling in line would have been a massive failure on his part. That being said, I still got chills when the army started cheering for Rhaenyra. It gave me a similar feeling to the King of the North chants in Thrones or when Dany assembled her armies. The cut to Rhaenyra's face shows a mixture of joy and relief because this is the first time she's seen support for her cause on this scale, especially among men. Remember the huge issue she had with the small folk early on in season 1 when she saw the play that was put on? The relationship between Rhaenyra and Daemon seemed a little awkward at moments, but there is still a little chemistry there.
Let's jump to Driftwood real quick, where Corlys is getting ready to head back to the blockade. Him and Alan end up having an argument, and Alan calls Corlys out for being an absentee father all of these years. Now that Laenor and Laena are no longer around, Corlys finally decides to show up and get involved in Alan's life. Alan tells Corlys that he'll follow his orders, but he doesn't need any help from him. Corlys has no rebuttal.
Fair points from Alan, and for all of his fortitude and patience, he had to let Corlys have it at some point. You can't keep all that in. Corlys is righting his wrongs, but perhaps a little bit too late. It's a well-acted scene all around.
As for Rhaena, she's wandering the Vale and pretty lost. At this point, she's nearly dying of thirst and manages to find a small stream for water. At night, she almost freezes to death. But she does finally find Sheepstealer, and we see this mangy-looking dragon with wild-ass wings. Awesome potential development for Rhaena.
Yeah, we spent some time this season building the springboard for her character, and Sheepstealer would go a long way toward making her relevant next season if it pans out with the action ramping up. The question then becomes, does she return to the Vale and join the war, or does she follow her half-bros across the sea as a measure of insurance?
After gaining Daemon back on her side, Rhaenyra returns to Dragonstone and is focused on doing what it takes to end the war. Out of nowhere, Alicent pulls up in the middle of the night to speak with Rhaenyra. Alicent pretty much admits to fucking up and tells Rhaenyra that she doesn't want this life anymore. It's ironic since way back in the day, Alicent cared about duty and order, and Rhaenyra was the one who cared about being free. But now it's switched around, and all Alicent wants is freedom. She tells Rhaenyra that in 3 days, Aemond will head to the Riverlands. Alicent will give Rhaenyra the heads up, and Rhaenyra can swoop in and take King's Landing. All Alicent wants in return is to escape with her daughter and granddaughter. She also asks for Aegon's life to be spared, but Rhaenyra says that this is simply not possible. Aegon has to die. Ultimately, Alicent understands that this is the case, and Aegon's death in a surrender situation is inevitable. Rhaenyra asks Alicent to choose, and she tearfully agrees to let Aegon die, a son for a son. Rhaenyra tells Alicent that history isn't going to be kind to her, but Alicent doesn't care anymore. She has no ambition other than to walk away and breathe the open air and die unnoticed. Alicent does float out the idea that maybe Rhaenyra could run off with her. It's a nice moment, but Rhaenyra cannot leave. She tearfully tells Alicent to go.
Sneaking back and forth from Dragonstone to King's Landing and vice versa has been a consistent feature of the season. Sometimes you forget how close they are to each other. It was nice to finally hear Alicent admit she messed up, but I didn't expect her to ask for witness protection. This is very reminiscent of Cole's earlier admissions that he used to think he was simply doing the right thing and acting honorably. Alicent's contrast to Rhaenyra and how the two went separate ways around the midpoint of season 1 was obvious, but to hear her side of things and some of that residual jealousy added some perspective. There's just no way Rhaenyra can allow Aegon to walk free if she ascends, not after an entire war got started over this. Still, I'm a little shocked Alicent accepted these terms. It's crazy that she put almost all this into motion and is now flipping completely, and even wears blue rather than the Hightower green after a certain point this season. All the sacrifices she made in the name of duty never paid off for her, or for Helaena. Trading out of this position for freedom, as Chen said, is a nice way to wrap up this theme.
Alright, let's jump over to the Greens. We open up somewhere off the coast of Essos, where Tyland Lannister is negotiating with the Triarchy to get them to break up the blockade in the Stepstones. They ask for an unreasonable rate, and Tyland says even House Lannister, which is known for being very rich, can't afford that. One of the Triarchy leaders proposes an alternative. They'll send over a huge armada of ships if they get to keep the Stepstones in return. It's a big price to pay, and Tyland is hesitant. But the Triarchy leaders say that if they get the Stepstones, they'll stop the looting and piracy of ships going through that area. Instead, they'll just charge a simple tax on those passing through. It's a ton of economic power to give up, but Tyland makes the deal. However, there is one condition. He must sail with the commander of their fleet, Admiral Lohar. The men will only fight for Lohar, and Lohar needs to see what Tyland is made of before agreeing to fight with him. Lohar will only sail with a man who can best her. When Tyland wonders best her in what, we see that she's referring to a mud wrestling competition. The competition goes down, and at first, Lohar is toying with Tyland and kicks his ass, but he manages to get a second wind and land some good shots on Lohar, even giving her a bloody lip with a vicious backhand. This earns him the respect of Lohar, and she calls Tyland a worthy ambassador from King's Landing. She'll consider Tyland's request after they have dinner. So before dinner starts, Tyland has to sing a song to entertain everyone, and he gives a pretty solid performance. Lohar keeps purposefully messing up Tyland's name as well. This is just straight up hazing at this point. In a candid moment though, she does agree to sail with Tyland, and she gives a big toast. She's got some history with Corlys, and she's excited to get revenge on the Sea Snake. There's still one more thing that Tyland must do though. Lohar requests that Tyland sleep with Lohar's wives. She wants to have Tyland's children. I gotta say, Lohar has treated Tyland pretty well. Yeah, he had to fight in the mud, but afterwards, an incredible dinner and sex with Lohar's wives. Daemon, tell me where the sign-up sheet is again. Reminds me of this scene in Entourage.
Now, if you want this check to clear, you will go upstairs and you will fuck my wife like the superstar you are, while I stay down here and play billiards with your friends, huh?
The Essos scenes are fun, and they remind us about the whole other world that exists outside of Westeros. During some behind-the-scenes clips, the directors mention how the opening atmosphere is designed to show us that Tyland is uncomfortable and out of his element. By the end, we see Tyland has more backbone than we thought. Definitely cooler than Jason. The only issue is that these scenes seem to be oddly placed in a season finale arc, which might be a product of HBO condensing this season from 10 to 8, but more on that later. The Triarchy guys are up to no good and don't seem real trustworthy, but you have to admire Tyland pursuing the enemy of my enemy is my friend line of thinking. Their hatred for the Valyrians is an interesting wrinkle and could be symbolic of Corlys' past coming back to knock on the door, like it already has with Adam and Alan.
As for Aemond, he's been going fucking nuts after finding out that Rhaenyra added 3 more dragons to her team. He commits war crimes on a small castle named Sharp Point, which is very close to Dragonstone. Vhagar burns everyone there, and we hear the blood-curdling screams of the dying people. Aemond is such a psycho.
We've lost him. Granddaddy Otto would never have let this go down, because indiscriminately burning villages is the type of move that turns more small folk against you and creates more enemies than friends. It will definitely not help out the already abysmal approval rating that Aemond is rocking.
Later on, as Jasper Wilde tells Aemond that the Targaryen lowborn snuck out of King's Landing through fishing boats, Aemond's solution is to make all the ships entering and leaving King's Landing undergo a thorough inspection. This will slow everything down and make it harder for the residents to get fish, but Aemond says sacrifices must be made by everyone. A desperate Aemond then tries to force Rhaena to take her dragon Dreamfire and enter the war. Obviously, Rhaena refuses. Could you imagine her flying into battle and burning people? No way. Aemond won't take no for an answer until Alicent intervenes and tells him to back the fuck off. Aemond tries to talk to Rhaena one-on-one later on and get her to ride to Harrenhal with him. She refuses and calls Aemond out for burning Aegon. Aemond tries to deny it, but Rhaena says she saw it. She then says that Aegon will be king again and Aemond will be lost forever in the God's Eye. This enrages Aemond, and when he threatens to kill her, she coldly tells him that her death won't change anything. She then walks off.
What really stands out in this convo is that Aemond appears his most vulnerable in quite a while. Being told you're destined to lose the throne and die in the process will do that to a guy. He seems to be on the exact opposite path Daemon is on. While they were similar figures in season 1 and even at the start of this season, Aemond's selfish, malevolent power grab stands in direct contrast to Daemon waking the hell up and realizing he would be a shitty king. Helena's past foresight has been a fun character quirk, but we finally see how in depth it goes. She basically astral projects into Daemon's vision and has some three-eyed raven type talent going on here.
As for Aemond's brother Aegon, he's recovered enough at this point to engage in some conversation. He begs Orwell for some rum and calls him a good man. Larys pulls up and tells Aegon that they gotta leave King's Landing ASAP. Rhaenyra has added 3 more dragons to her side and it's not safe here. Aegon says that he's the king and doesn't want to run. Larys tells him that even without Rhaenyra, Aemond is gonna find a way to kill him if he doesn't run. Aegon counters by saying that he'll have Aemond arrested. Larys points out that arresting Aemond is pretty much impossible to do, since having Vhagar would be their only defense against Rhaenyra. Larys has a contingency plan. He moved most of Harrenhal's gold reserves to the Iron Bank in Braavos. He wants to take Aegon to Essos and hang out there until this war blows over. Aegon openly wonders what the point of all of this is. He's disfigured, his cock was burned off, his dragon is dead. Oh shit, I guess this is confirmation that Sunfire is indeed dead. Larys gives him a pep talk. Yes, Aegon can barely walk and he can't fuck anymore, but he can still be remembered as a good king. That gives him a bit of light and a bit of purpose. He agrees, and he and Larys quietly escape Westeros.
He's lost many things, but he's still got a taste for booze. I could totally see modern day Aegon being a captain or Jack and Coke guy. Maybe make it a double. Larys is teaching some game on strategy, but you have to admire the fight that Aegon still has to him. There's also something to be said for the pointlessness of all this maneuvering in musical chairs when you look at what fell upon him in the end. However, the instability that the Greens face now is basically due to him pushing Otto out at the beginning of the season. There's a trace of the Aegon we knew who wanted the love of the small folk earlier this season in there, with a half smile that appears when Larys starts to mention how Aegon can potentially come back and play that role of hero later on.
As for Alicent, she returns from her camping trip and decides that she's completely over all of this shit. We covered this earlier in the section on the Blacks, but Alicent wants to take Helaena and Jaehaera and get the fuck out of here. Aemond's getting crazier by the day, so Alicent asks Maester Orwell for a favor, sneak her out of King's Landing so she can go to Dragonstone and speak to Rhaenyra. We also see Criston Cole, Sir Gawain, and the rest of their men camping out on the way to Harrenhal. Cole is openly smelling Alicent's handkerchief, and an enraged Gawain holds a sword to his neck. Gawain now knows that Cole smashed Alicent, and he calls Cole out for being an oathbreaker and a virtueless person. Cole counters by saying that Alicent saved his life twice. She's his only beacon of light. When Gawain mentions that the rest of the Kingsguard has honor, Cole questions if that's true. Do they resist their temptations, or are they corrupt like everyone else? Cole says that his desire for women has fucked up his life. He's lost all of his honor and he lives with shame. Even being a warrior holds no meaning for him anymore. He's witnessed what the dragons can do, and he knows their swords won't mean anything. He's accepted that they will march towards their inevitable annihilation.
We already knew how much Alicent meant to Cole, but his statements on honor were the most interesting his character has been in a while. He's so disillusioned with what used to be his previous self-righteousness that the full acceptance of the bleak state of a war riddled with dragonfire is all he's got left. That and the token of Alicent's favor. It's kind of badass as far as depressive warrior behavior goes though, and even Gawain can't deny it. One minute you're gonna put the guy to death or send him to the wall, the next minute you'd probably grab a beer with him.
So the finale ends with a massive montage that sets up the storylines for season 3. The Dragonseeds are getting ready to go into battle. Tyland and Zohar are sailing towards the Stepstones. Rhaena has a chance to claim a dragon and earn her respect. The High Tower army marches towards the Riverlands, along with Daeron and his dragon Tessarion. The old fighters that Cregan Stark sent over cross the Twins. The Lannister army is marching towards the Riverlands as well. And finally, motherfucking Otto Hightower is sitting in a jail cell. What the hell?
This finale felt like an excellent second or third to last episode of a season. I don't know why 8 episodes has become the new standard for season lengths in the action genre. Let the story develop and the plotlines breathe on their own, because you're diminishing the work your writers are doing by making them condense so much vital information and rearranging things. The cinematography and character development were on point, but the action just wasn't on that level of Prime Thrones that people were used to seeing. Regardless of the critiques of this season, Rook's Rest was an all-timer. Next season is probably where we're going to find the meat of the action in the war.
Alright, that does it for our Season 2 finale breakdown of House of the Dragon. It's been a hell of a journey. I'm exhausted. Daemon's exhausted. I guess we'll see you guys in a few years for Season 3.